This short presentation will hopefully go over and help you to remind yourself about some of the key points about the formative and summative assessments for the psychosocial module. Module number is given on this slide, HSCP4043A, and hopefully as time goes by on the module, the pieces that we have on the timetable will begin to make sense to you as a whole. This module deals with quite a lot of fluffy concepts, which some of you might find quite hard to grasp. Others of you may be very comfortable with these ideas and have examined them at college or as part of your experiences in practice or life to date. So those of you who are more comfortable or have studied some psychology or sociology, do be prepared to be coaches and supporters to those who are struggling a wee bit with this. Previous students have called it Rosie's fluffy pink stuff, and I make no apology, even if you are finding that it's not making sense to you in terms of how this fits. I can assure you it does. The modern paramedic role is not just about following slavishly rules and protocols. Of course, in very urgent and time-critical circumstances, that is the case, and very often your soon-to-be beloved J.R. Kelk guidelines, with their lovely neat do this, do that, do the other rules, will come in for some aspects, but others you're dealing with living, breathing people whose lives and experiences all differ, whose needs and values are different. So one recipe book won't cater for all. This is what this module is about. The psychological, environmental, sociological and spiritual aspects. And by spiritual, I don't mean religious. I mean those things that are culturally important, and those things that are the guiding principles for people, the things that matter for them. Hopefully, as you examine the 3 inquiry-based learning packages, the first, which deals with people with dementia, the second with those who are living with learning disability or autism, and the third, an introduction to mental health and mental ill health, you are going to be recognizing that there is a clear theme about being person-centered or person-focused, understanding the individual and their needs. You'll also be examining some of the professional and ethical and legal aspects, including consent and professional values, which are so important to compassionate and caring practice. Safeguarding of vulnerable adults is also a key element. Promoting health, educating and supporting others and yourself. You can't look after patients and their families and each other if you don't look after yourself. You will be working in small inquiry-based learning groups, and this will help you to investigate and explore topics so that you can then come together as a group and present what you have found. So you'll be working in teams as well as an individual. Oral communication as EBL and as poster presentations, and presentation skills, be it PowerPoint, be it posters, be it doing quizzes and activities. And of course, managing your time to make sure that you can do the necessary elements and without feeling that you're under too much time pressure. This slide gives one definition of psychosocial, indicating that psychology covers many elements. It covers the mind, including thinking. This is known as cognition. Positive thoughts can make people feel good and imbue a sense of well-being. People who are anxious or negative or sad thoughts are likely to feel unhappy and distressed. Emotions, people's emotions, feelings and moods, very important. We all have emotions that shift according to circumstances and our interactions, but how that might affect us longer term and the way in which that is relevant to both physiological health and psychosocial well-being is also worthy of exploration. And psychology also looks at behaviours, how behaviours are cultivated and nurtured, the issue between genetics and environment, and how behaviours are affected by people's thoughts and feelings. The social side covers interaction and social networks, relationships with others. It is well known and well evidenced in psychological and mental health literature that people who have good, strong social networks and social support and who can perceive the positives in that do better in terms of their health and well-being, or if they have been unwell, tend to flourish and relapse less if they have good, firm social connections. You only have to see the circumstances that some people live in and understand a little bit about how poverty, housing, income, circumstances, work or lack of it affects people to realise that those kind of social aspects are very powerful. As are cultures and traditions that people live their lives by, what is meaningful to one person may not be to another or may not be understood by others. And roles and tasks. So, for example, you are developing into the role of a paramedic professional. That positions you differently from somebody who may be in a different role. So how does that affect people and relationships with people? I do not pretend that this module is going to be the be-all and end-all, but merely an introduction to these very important and complicated issues. Here is a different model. It's actually a model of motivation done by Abraham Maslow. Many of you may have come across it. It's known as a hierarchy of needs, and again is a way of trying to understand people holistically, which means completely, biologically, psychologically and sociologically, starting with basic life needs like air, food, drink, shelter and so on, as illustrated there, and then moving up to safety, protection, security, limits, order and so on. Then belongingness and love needs, coming to our social networks, family, affection, close affiliation, being part of peer groups and so on. Self-esteem needs, feeling a sense of achievement, feeling a sense of belonging, feeling a sense of being part of something. Cognitive needs, the need to find meaning, the need to find oneself, the need to have knowledge. Aesthetic needs, balance and beauty, how things fit together. Coming towards the top level of the triangle, self-actualization, where you feel personally self-fulfilled and that your needs for growth and attainment, and then transcendence, helping others along the way. Very top of the triangle, you can see that with one or two exceptions from history and literature, most people would need to be able to breathe properly, have enough food to eat before they start to get to the need for knowledge and the need for aesthetic and self-actualization. So it's another way that may help you to understand some of the complicated things we'll be asking you to explore during this module. So in thinking about the formative, which are developmental, and the summative, which are the decision-making aspects of assessment, let me introduce you to the module learning outcomes. There are 5, which are closely linked. Obviously, we want you to begin to understand about how psychosocial aspects affect people and how they might present. We also want you to understand the importance of person-centred or tailored care and how that applies to the care of people who live with dementia, mental health difficulties, learning disabilities and autism. And of course you may come across marginalised group like people from different ethnic groupings, homeless people, people who are generally not normally included within society. Concepts such as stigmatisation and stereotyping and labelling come in here, and we will be exploring some of those during the module. Clearly, one of the important parts of a professional toolkit is to demonstrate respect for others, even if how they present, their behaviour and what is important to them is very, very different from what is important and what would guide our thinking and behaviour. There's always an opportunity to make every contact count by being able to provide information, to promote health and to educate others, including colleagues and patients. Hopefully by the end of the module you'll feel that you have quite a lot of information at your fingertips that you can use in this way. And very closely allied to person-centred and tailored and holistic care is beginning to recognise individual differences such as culture, gender, and how to behave in a professional way that is not discriminatory. The first summative assignment is a group poster presentation. You will be divided into small groups of 5 and we'll practice giving presentations formatively around the topic areas for inquiry-based learning. But the third EBL presentation will be a practice group poster presentation. This is something that last year's group particularly asked for and we have put in place. It's pass-fail. You won't have to wait 20 working days for your feedback. It will be quicker than that because of the marking on the day, and you will get a group feedback sheet for each group which gives the main elements of feedback. You'll be expected to attend. It's treated as an oral exam, which means that if you are going to be absent, you need to use the extenuating circumstances process. You can't just not turn up. There are a number of formative inquiry-based learning presentations. Each one will happen after you have had opportunity to work in your groups, looking at and focusing at different aspects of different patient groups. So the first one focuses on people with a learning disability and is formative, so you can learn from the feedback and from the process of actually working together and organising yourselves so that you are able to bring together your individual work and work as a team. Following your focus on people living with a learning disability and autism, you will then have content and preparation and inquiry-based learning time for independent study related to looking after and understanding better the experience of people living with dementia. As before, you will work as a group, identify who's going to do what, and plan how you can bring your individual work together to present as a team. This is a second opportunity to get formative feedback to feed forward towards your EBL poster presentation, which is the summative element that happens later in the module. The third formative EBL presentation on the 13th of November is a practice group presentation of poster. So it goes beyond the EBL presentation. Yes, you are presenting your work, but you need to format it into a poster presentation and explore and explain around that. So again, it hopefully will build your confidence in doing presentations or practice in preparing a poster together, but also profit from more feedback on the day, so that you can continue to pimp up how you work as a team, how you manage your time, how you communicate, your body language to support an effective communication and presentation. The second summative assessment is a 1,000-word reflection, which you submit the week after you've done your summative group poster presentation. This is particularly about your learning. It's weighted as half of the module credits, as is the summative poster presentation. This element is graded, whereas the poster presentation is pass-fail. It's an online Blackboard submission, so you'll be shown how to do that. and you will get your annotations and comments and grade in the first instance via Blackboard. This gives you an opportunity to focus on your own reflection, and you'll have seen earlier the slide that shows which learning outcomes are linked specifically to this reflection. So let's drill down a little bit more into the poster presentation. You now know you have an oral presentation and a poster to do, which you do together as a group, and then the individual summative, which is a written reflection of 1,000 words. So this poster presentation in your group of 5 is particularly focusing on how you communicate and how you've worked as a team, your awareness of relevant psychosocial concepts and what you have decided in terms of the group that you will focus on, whether it's somebody with dementia, whether it is learning disabilities, whether it's mental health, or perhaps it is health and well-being of carers, health and well-being of paramedics and students. But you're thinking particularly about health promotion and showing that you have understanding, appreciation of psychosocial aspects and how they affect presentation, that you're respectful, and that you've got a good evidence base, which is not just Wikipedia, which has a range of appropriate and current references, mainly from the last 5 years. The poster presentation should be about 20 minutes, normally 15 minutes plus 5 minutes for questions and comments from the rest of the group. We will also ask you, and I will provide you with a template for this, as each individual student to actually quickly document their individual contribution and their own personal references, so we can be sure that the work has been shared equitably within each group. So what will a good poster presentation look like? Well, clearly you need to be communicating effectively. You do need to time manage. You need to try and make sure, even if you've got loads that you want to say, that you're really quite specific and focused, so that you can make sure that each person in the group has enough time, so that one person doesn't hog it all, leaving the last person with 30 seconds. You demonstrate, as I've said before, awareness of psychosocial concepts, interaction between them and patient presentation, the evidence base and respect for others. But it is particularly important that you decide from all you've learned very shrewdly what to select for the poster itself, and then what to select to talk about, so that you are able to manage your time and what you say without undue pressure, but also giving everyone else the most salient points. The second summative is a 1,000 word assignment. You have the 10% tolerance, which means you can go to 1,100 words, but do try and come in, if you like, on target at no more than 1,000 words if you can. The title is My Learning Related to Person-Centred Care and its Application to the Care of People with either dementia, mental health difficulties, or learning disabilities and autism, or a marginalised or vulnerable group. And we'll talk in tutorials about what your ideas are and what groups, if you are going to select, you might want to focus on. The 1,000 word summary uses a reflective framework, so you can transfer some of your learning from the CPD module, where you'll be looking at reflection, and try out a model of reflection to help you to tease out your individual contribution and learning and what you've learned as a result. You'll use a recognised reflective framework, and you structure your summary with 5 or so key references. I will talk more about that, but it's not the number, it's the way that they're used is important. But with 1,000 words, you probably couldn't really have any more than about 10 at the most if you're going to use them thoughtfully. If you only have one reference, you're unlikely to be able to provide a robust case to support your insights and your learning. At the bottom of this slide are the 3 learning outcomes that specifically relate to this written summary. As I said before, it will be submitted on or by the 6th of December, 3 p.m, and is submitted electronically by Blackboard. So what are the marking criteria? Here they are in a grid showing you the weighting. So we have a need for you to show that you understand something of psychosocial aspects and person-centred care, that you are respectful and demonstrate respect for others. The reflective framework has a few marks, but more important is the demonstration of your knowledge and learning related to psychosocial aspects and person-centred care. In order to have a good, balanced paper, you need to organise your discussion. So since this is an early summative piece, we're giving 10% of the marks for being organised and systematic and for having clear written communication. Obviously, use of references and sources to support what you are claiming in terms of your learning and show that you have done reading and learning. So hopefully that will give you an idea of how to weight what is quite a short piece, therefore every word needs to count. Formatting guidance, here we are. This is what we are generally saying, and at the bottom of this slide is the module HSCP4043A and example to show you where you put your registration number, the assignment and so on. The first assignment, 001, is the poster presentation and 002 will be the written reflection. Okay, so this gives you an idea about line spacing and font and margins and so on, and you will practice that in your formative essay, which is a short essay done very near the beginning of the CPD module. So how do we mark? There will be a first marker. We have 2 to 3 markers at the most for this piece of work who are familiar with this piece of work in the module and have marked this since the course started. The first marker will mark in an anonymised way, meaning they will mark by number and not know your name. We don't have a second marker, that's normally reserved for large pieces of work like dissertations, but we will have an internal moderator who is somebody else, not one of the first markers, who will mark us if you like and look at the quality of our marking, whether we're consistent with each other, but also with how previous cohorts have been treated, whether our comments are constructive, helpful, balanced, and who will produce a moderation report as part of our quality processes. We also have an external examiner. The external examiner will review the marking and moderation, and again will be commenting on our quality, our consistency, and how effective our marking has been. You get a provisional mark for coursework, normally within 20 working days. That is provisional until the exam board confirms the mark. That allows for time for the external examiner to fully review everything and to make sure that any extenuating circumstances that are submitted and are considered by the panel can be taken into account by the exam board prior to the confirmation of the mark. We are, it may be interesting to note, the only university system in the world which has a system of independent external examiners, an extra quality aspect that is not the case in any other country of the world. So what form will feedback take? A range, not all of it summative. So formatively, you will get face-to-face feedback, one-to-one and in groups, related to your EBL presentations and to group work, and if you are brave enough, as I hope you should be, to begin to punch your ideas for your posters, for your presentations, for your written assessment, you'll get feedback on your ideas and also be able to offer each other under peer group discussion feedback. You can share a draft or piece of draft work and your draft plan with your personal advisor, who will then give you feedback by track changes perhaps, or by email, or talk you through it. or give you audio feedback so that you can take that forward into future work. As regards summative feedback, you will get a feedback form from your EBL presentations formatively, and you will get a summative group feedback form as well. For the written element, there will be annotations on the script, and there will be a rubric which will give you comments and feed forward points too, so that you can see where you've done well and where you could develop things further. So it's up to you to use feedback. Don't be one of the students who turns around and says at the end of the course, I wish I'd read my feedback, I wish I'd had tutorials, I wish I'd seen how things collect up. Be the student who will look at formative feedback, will ask questions in the classroom or check out with colleagues and say, what points did you have? What have you learnt? Are we seeing similar things? That will help you support your summative. Each EBL feedback formative element and each opportunity to test your ideas out in tutorials about your emerging ideas should give you ideas and clarity to support your summative. At the end of the module, when you have your summative feedback, that should spur you into thinking, how can I use that to help me to either continue to do the things that worked or develop further the things that didn't work so much, so that next time I can get even more marks. So support for this assignment. You'll see quite a number of dates in the first point. That is because we've got seminars, tutorials, things that will link up. You may not always see that when we got a group tutorial and I'm talking to you again about the assessment and asking people to begin to share their ideas, you may not see how it links up. It may not be till towards the end that you'll say, ah, now I see. Nevertheless, got more opportunities than many modules for you to ask questions, to test your ideas about, or prepare by bringing some of your draft ideas so that you can get feedback on them. Don't forget that you're doing some parallel modules, and within the CPD module you will have your first formative short essay. You'll submit that and get feedback. The content may be different because it's looking at professional communication. Nevertheless, some academic things like the organisation of the discussion, the way that you communicate, the way that you use references should feed forward into the written element for this module. There are academic support drop-ins both here and in Queen's, so watch out for information about when they're happening. I put the link to the rich range of resources that the Student Support Service offers, and I think in your induction you will have heard from them about many of the things that they offer, both online and in terms of drop-ins, workshops, study guides and so on. If you do want to access them for help around this assignment, don't forget to take the information so they know what you've been asked to do. So, there is a specific hints and tip sheet which is lots of detailed guidance for the written assessment. Please read it, and then you can ask questions if you don't understand, and you can return to it as you're beginning to craft your written submission. Previous students have influenced what you are facing today. We asked, they said, and this is what we've done. The September 2014 group had 4 EBL packages. They asked for us to reduce this from 4 to 3, and this we have done. The next group asked for more tutorials to help their assessment planning. This was implemented mid-module and has led to the large number of opportunities that we have for you to share ideas. Do take up the opportunity. September 16 asked for a slight change in the wording of the guidance for the written reflection. This has been made. And September 17 had the idea, which was a really good one, that the third formative EBL presentation become a formative poster presentation. And voila, here it is for your group. You're bound to have questions. So in the first instance, address questions to me Here are my contact details, and don't forget that when you get to having a piece of draft work or looking at your plan, make contact with your academic advisor. The academic advising regulations say that we can look at a piece of draft work or the plan. What we can't do is pre-mark it, but get planned. Top tips from all students from all professions for the last 30 or 40 years has fed back to me have been: get organised. Don't get yourself into a twirl by leaving things too long. And those of you who aren't Mozarts, in other words, you can't pull it out of the bag at 3 o'clock in the morning on the day that submission is due, remember, you will have to work at it and you'll have to make some sense, so you will need to make sure you don't feel too panicky. This can be a great opportunity, and it really is something that can support the whole of your programme and underpin the way that you develop so that you are holistic and person-centred practitioners. Even if you can't see it now, we know what we're talking about. All the national guidance said these are the really important things that traditional paramedic programmes have lacked. So go with the vibe and enjoy the journey.